So Kaitlan Collins hosts a primetime show on CNN, and it's not doing well. She's not doing well. It's failing like everything else on CNN. But she was sure she had a gotcha moment with her guest yesterday, Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Doug Collins. Now, Doug Collins is a former congressman. He's a veteran of the military. He's a former podcaster, and now he's the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And listen, he's a great guest to have. I've interviewed him multiple times, and he could talk about anything. But now that he's the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, he wants to talk about Veterans Affairs, things that affect veterans, things that are relevant and important to veterans. Not Kaitlan Collins. Kaitlan Collins wanted to snag him in this whole signal text messaging attack on the Houthis controversy. She was sure that she was going to get Doug Collins to be a part of this scandal. So I want you to watch the brilliance of how Collins handles this moment. We're going to break it down Zapruder-style in a minute, but let's watch the whole thing all the way through, because what Doug Collins does here is absolutely magnificent. Watch.
Do you believe that a mistake was made here, though, to have this conversation, to add a reporter, and to have it on an unsupported, classified group setting?
Kaitlan, as I've just told you, I've just answered the question. I wasn't part of it. And, I'm not going to speculate more than what the president's already talked about and those who've been involved have talked about, but we'd love to talk about the veterans.
Yeah, and I do have questions about the veterans, but given what we saw with the group chat and how this was used, you are a member of the cabinet. You obviously know these other members, several of them who were in there. Is this typical for the cabinet to have conversations over Signal? Is this something that you use?
Well, Kaitlan, since you undoubtedly do not want to talk about the VA, I have a question as VA Secretary. As cabinet, I want to ask you, because I've been curious about this, because my job is to take care of veterans, and I would like to know why CNN is hostile to veterans, especially one in Florida, where you just had a $5 million defamation suit taking offense at a veteran who was trying to help people. In fact, one of your employees actually said, "We're going to nail him." I have a question for you, Kaitlan. Is that employee still employed? Are you really concerned about veterans? So if we don't want to talk about veterans now, you want to talk about everything else, I'd like to hear from CNN as the Veteran Cabinet Secretary why CNN seems to have a problem with veterans.
Well, Mr. Secretary, respectfully, my question was about whether or not you as a member of the cabinet use this. And respectfully, I'm conducting the investigation. And I do have a lot of questions for you on Veterans Affairs, but I don't think it would be unwarranted to ask
what you want to do is talk about the subject I've already answered. And if you want to continue this like this, that's fine. But there are VA employees who are working very hard. There are veterans who get their care from the VA and they get their benefits from the VA. And it does me no good to speculate on something that I've already asked and answered. So I've asked and answered your question. Why don't you answer mine? Is this person still employed who said they were going to nail one of my veterans, who you had to do a $5 million award from a jury because of defamation, and then you settled the case? Answer my question.
Respectfully, sir, I'm asking the questions here, and I have no involvement in what you're referencing there. But if you don't want to answer the question about whether or not...
I hope you enjoyed this nearly as much as I did. This was so beautiful and so brilliant and so magnificent. And I want to break it down for you so you can see exactly what went right here for Doug Collins and what went disastrously wrong for Kaitlan Collins. And there's a lot to it. So let's keep this in split screen here so we can watch together. So now here's Kaitlan Collins with the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And this was not the first question she asked about this chat. This is the Signal chat, right? About the that got leaked weirdly to Jeffrey Goldberg. Now understand something, very important part of this premise. Doug Collins wasn't part of the chat. He wasn't one of them. So all Kaitlan Collins is concerned about is a gotcha moment. Oh, well, you're in the cabinet, so I'm going to try to nail you to the wall on this thing, when it literally has nothing to do with him. All right, so let's watch.
Do you believe that a mistake was made here, though, to have this conversation, to add a reporter, and to have it on an unsupported, classified group setting?
By the way, what a stupid question. Do you think a mistake was made here to have a reporter on there? Of course it was a mistake. A huge mistake. Who watched Jeffrey Goldberg on that chat? What a moron you are. And this, what does that mean, unsupported program? Again, let's reiterate, sadly, Kaitlan Collins doesn't follow the news, even though she is a news anchor on CNN. But as I keep reminding you, her main skill set is to have a nice haircut and to read a teleprompter. So The fact is, this was a supported platform. Signal is a platform that is approved on various agencies. In fact, the last administration used it. And as we heard from CIA Director John Ratcliffe, the first thing that happened when he started the job is that they installed Signal on his devices. So again, Kaitlan Collins should really follow the news. Maybe she should watch this show so she can be better informed. Okay, so now here comes Collins with the reply.
Kaitlan, as I've just told you, I've just answered the question. I wasn't part of it. And, I'm not going to speculate more than what the president's already talked about and those who've been involved have talked about, but we'd love to talk about the veterans.
All right, so he's not going to answer that question because he wasn't part of that. I want you to remember that. We're going to call back to this moment in a bit, okay? But it's Doug Collins is saying that I got no answer for you because I wasn't part of this. All right, now let's watch.
Yeah, and I do have questions about the veterans, but given what we saw with the group chat and how this was used, you are a member of the cabinet.
By the way, can you just look at Collins's reaction when she comes back to the group chat question? Watch Doug here.
Group chat and how this was used. You are a member of the cabinet. You obviously know these other members, several of them who were in there. Is this typical for the cabinet to have conversations over Signal? Is this something that you use?
So you saw Doug Collins there chuckle. He's like, oh, there she goes again. All right, fine. She wants to talk about this? All right, fine. And he's prepared. He's ready. And this is what's so beautiful about it. He knew this was going to happen. He knows the media very well. He's been around the block, and he was prepared. So now here it comes for the kill.
Well, Kaitlan, since you undoubtedly do not want to talk about the VA, I have a question as VA Secretary. As Cabinet, I want to ask you, because I've been curious about this, because my job is to take care of veterans, and I would like to know why CNN is hostile to veterans.
All right, so I love the fact that this whole thing is framed in, all right, listen, you don't want to talk about the veterans? I want to talk about the veterans. I represent the veterans. I've got a particular veteran in mind. Now, as he goes through talking about this $5 million defamation suit that CNN lost because they defamed, slandered, and lied about a Navy veteran who was over in Afghanistan saving people and rescuing refugees. Right? And by the way, this is the first time the CNN audience has ever heard about this story. Because CNN, of course, it's not news because it makes CNN look like the defaming, lying frauds that they are. I want you to keep an eye. Watch Kaitlan Collins get uncomfortable. Watch her shift in her seat. Watch her begin. See how her face is very neutral right now? Over the course of the next 30 seconds, watch her mouth as it looks like she has just sucked on a rotten lemon. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. She can't hide. She can't hide how bad this is for her.
Especially one in Florida where you just had a $5 million defamation suit taking offense at a veteran who was trying to help people. In fact, one of your employees actually said, we're going to nail him. I have a question for you, Kaitlan. Is that employee still employed? Are you really concerned about veterans? So if we don't want to talk about veterans now, you want to talk about everything else, I'd like to hear from CNN as the Veteran Cabinet Secretary, why CNN seems to have a problem with veterans.
Well, Mr. Secretary, respectfully, my question was about whether or not you as a member of the cabinet use this. And respectfully, I'm conducting the investigation. And I do have a lot of questions.
Hold on. You're conducting the investigation? Oh, do you have a badge? Do you have a little pretend cop outfit? Do you play like you're a detective or something? Is this CSI, Kaitlan Collins, not CNN, Kaitlan? I'm conducting the investigation. I think she meant interview. But I guess in her mind, it's not really an interview. It's an investigation. We're investigating a crime here. After all, you work for Donald Trump. Boy, that's a tell. But then it gets the best part. Remember how I told you to remember that Doug Collins was not going to answer the question because he wasn't a party to the group chat? Remember when I asked you to stick a pin in that? All right. Now watch what Kaitlan Collins does.
Questions for you on Veterans Affairs, but I don't think it would be
what you want to do is you want to talk
ask
about a subject. What you want to do is talk about a subject I've already answered. And if you want to continue this like this, that's fine. But there are VA employees who are working very hard. There are veterans who get their care from the VA and they get their benefits from the VA. And it does me no good to speculate on something that I've already asked and answered. So I've asked and answered your question. Why don't you answer mine? Are you still, is this person still employed who said they were going to nail one of my veterans? Who you had to do a $5 million award from a jury because of defamation, and then you settled the case. Answer my question.
Respectfully, sir, I'm asking the questions here, and I have no involvement in
No,
what
I
you're
am right
referencing there.
Okay, I see. So she can drill Doug Collins, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, over and over and over again and make it look like he's hiding something and he's concealing something and he's deceitful because he won't answer a question about a group chat that he had no participation in and didn't involve him in any way whatsoever. But the second she's asked a rather innocuous question that actually does directly relate to her, because a producer at CNN, in creating a defamatory story against a retired Navy veteran who was saving refugees in Afghanistan, that this producer at CNN defamed and in a text message exchange said they were going to nail this guy. They lost a $5 million defamation suit. Then when it came time to punitive damages, CNN settled rather than let the jury, who just awarded $5 million to the plaintiff, rather than let that jury come up with punitive damages, CNN settled it to get rid of it. So God knows how many tens of millions they may have paid for that. And the simple question is, you work with this guy. Is he still employed there? And Kaitlan Collins is like, hey, I had nothing to do with that. So I can't answer that. I should wait a second. Wait a second. You didn't let Doug Collins say that he couldn't answer a question because he didn't have anything to do with the stupid group chat. So why are the rules different from you, Kaitlan? Let's go. But she has a point. She has a point, actually. It wasn't her show, and it wasn't her producer. It was Jake Tapper's show. You know, Jake Tapper, the friend of the military, the only good guy that's over there, the only real journalist. It was his producer. Again, CNN audience, they don't know anything about this story. You do. We did a segment on it here. CNN lied about this guy. They lost a defamation suit, $5 million judgment from the jury. Then they settled it before they got to the punitive damages. And it's a really good question for Jake Tapper. See, Jake Tapper loves going and talking to veterans of Afghanistan and Iraq, and then he turns those conversations into a best-selling book that probably gets ghostwritten by somebody else, or maybe he throws it into AI at this point and lets Chat GPT write the book for him. It doesn't matter. Nobody reads the books, but everyone feels great about themselves because he sells the book, and it makes him look like he's a friend of the vets. And at the same time, he's got a producer on his staff who defamed and slimed and slandered. Jake Tapper was named as a defendant in that suit too, by the way. He had to testify via video deposition in the whole thing, and they lost. Maybe Jake Tapper should answer that question. Maybe he will on his show today. Hey, let's all hold our breath. No, we'll all be dead if we do that. Eventually, they actually did turn the conversation to Veterans Affairs. Kaitlan Collins got the message, and Doug Collins finished things up with a sledgehammer.
The Department of Veterans Affairs overall has been planning to cut about 80,000 jobs. You've talked about this. We've seen some Republicans, including Lindsey Graham up on Capitol Hill, say they believe Congress should have been consulted about that before they read about it. Is that something that you'll consult Congress on, where you're making those cuts and what that's going to look like?
All right, sorry, hang on a minute here. Hang on. I'd love to just sort of give you insight into how these hacks go about their business. These despicable, partisan, shameless liars in the mainstream media. You saw what happened there. Instead of actually asking a substantive question about what's going on at Veterans Affairs, what needs the veterans have, what reforms the secretary is putting in place. He's been on the job 6 weeks now. What he's able to do and accomplish on behalf of veterans, where they need more funding, whether the hospitals are currently staffed, all the stuff that vets would care about. And if she really wants to ask a question about supposed cuts that are going to take place from DOJ, because of course that's all they care about. No, the entire question was framed like this. Republican Lindsey Graham is angry at you and he's on your team and he's a Republican. I want to know what your response is. Go after him. Let's set a fight here. Let's go after each other, because my job isn't to get information for my viewers. My job is to pit you guys against each other so I can get a scalp to hang on my office wall. Because my whole job is to destroy Republicans. It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter based on what context, because this whole question is about pitting you against Lindsey Graham. Instead of, I don't know, well, what Doug Collins is going to bring up here, the real issue that's going on with VA, you want to create some conflict. How about what had been going on for 4 years when we didn't have a president that is effective in any way? Can you even name the Secretary of Veterans Affairs under Joe Biden? He should have said that. Excuse me, Caitlin, can you name who my predecessor was? Who was the Secretary of Veterans Affairs under Joe Biden? Quick. I'll give you 10 seconds.
Yeah, okay. That's a great question. Thank you for that, because we've had a lot of discussion about that. And remember, when Donald Trump was elected, it was generational change on D.C. as far as scope and size of government. And this is a government-wide reduction in force that we're looking at. And each place had a goal to shoot for that was, say, can you get there? And it's a goal. That's exactly what it is. 15%, you get the 80,000 number. We're going through a process right now of working with our career employees, working with our politicals, and working with the Hill. We've been briefing the Hill as we go forward. In fact, I'll actually be with the Senate pretty soon, and we're going to do that in a whole group setting. We've been doing it with individual members in the House as well on ideas that we have. Now, if we get to that number, that will be something that we take into account that will actually improve our service to our veterans and our healthcare side and our benefit side. We've increased, just the previous administration, through tens of billions of dollars at this department and tens of thousands of employees. And Caitlin, what was really concerning to me was our metrics never improved. In fact, they, for the most part, they didn't improve at all. And our disability claims actually skyrocketed. Our backlog skyrocketed. So money and people are not the issue. So what we're looking at here is, are we spending, the money properly, and are we having the right amount of employees, or do we have just too much bureaucracy? And I think that's the big key that we're looking at right now.
Yeah. All right. So a great answer from a great Secretary for Veterans Affairs and a great guy, and a great warrior when it comes to going after people in the media. This is the second time we've highlighted Doug Collins going after a hack journalist like Kaitlan Collins. Veterans Affairs is going to be fine under his watch. He is going to make it more efficient. It isn't a question of tens of billions of dollars that the Biden administration threw there when they actually didn't improve anything, because probably all those tens of billions of dollars and the 10,000 employees that they put in there were all based on, DEI CRT training for the doctors and nurses in the VA hospitals instead of actually helping the veterans. It'll be fine. He's going to do a great job. What I'm more concerned about right now is Kaitlan Collins. I don't think she's going to recover from interviews like that. That's got to leave a mark. And let's face it, she's already in the toilet right now with ratings on CNN and prime time. There's not much further she could fall. Maybe Kaitlan Collins is done. It's all right. You could always go back to the Daily Caller where you started. You remember when Tucker Carlson gave you your first big job? Back then you were writing about, sorority girls and chicks in bikinis and stuff like that. You've come a long way, Caitlin. I don't think you've learned much along the way.